Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your fast track to getting informed quickly and really understanding things. Have you ever set a huge goal, maybe like running a marathon, or tried to ditch a habit that just won't quit? Scrolling your phone, maybe. You know that feeling, right? Motivation's high at first, but then it just fizzles.
Yeah.
And you feel kind of stuck, maybe overwhelmed. We often look for these huge, like overnight changes. But what if the real secret, the actual key to lasting change, is way, way smaller? So today we're doing a deep dive into James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. It's incredibly influential. Our mission here is to unpack how these really tiny but consistent changes can actually compound, build up into significant long-term results. We want to give you a solid grasp of what makes behavior change stick. And yeah, expect some maybe surprising ideas and really practical strategies you can use.
That's exactly right. And the core idea in Atomic Habits, it sounds simple, but it's really powerful. Clear basically argues that real, lasting success, it isn't really about these massive, dramatic shifts. It's much more about small, systematic improvements, the kind that just stack up over time. And that word atomic, it's brilliant, isn't it? Because it means two things: really tiny, minuscule even, but also, incredibly powerful, like an atom. It perfectly captures this idea he talks about, that habits are like the compound interest of self-improvement. Those little things you do every day, they seem small, but like a tiny investment, they just grow and grow, often exponentially over the years.
Yeah, that compound interest idea applied to just our daily actions. It's really compelling, isn't it? Cleo really hammers this point home, this power of 1% improvements. But, for listeners who are maybe always looking for the next big thing, the big hack,
Yeah.
doesn't that sound almost too simple? Like, is there a catch?
Yeah.
Or maybe a common misunderstanding people have when they try to actually do this small incremental thing?
It does sound deceptively simple, you're right. I think the biggest hurdle, honestly, is our bias towards the dramatic. We're sort of conditioned to think big results must mean big, painful effort right now. But Clear's insight is that consistent small efforts are actually what get you past that initial resistance, that feeling of, ugh, I don't want to start. It's not about the giant leap. It's about making that first step so incredibly tiny that you almost can't say no to it. And what's really interesting is how he pivots from just focusing on, say, ambitious goals to really emphasizing building robust systems.
Ah, okay. Goals versus systems.
Exactly. Goals tell you where you're going, sure.
Yeah.
But it's the systems, the daily processes that actually get you there. So instead of just aiming for run a marathon, which is the goal, the system is becoming the type of person who runs daily. That's a really fundamental shift, and it often gets missed.
Right. Focusing on the process, not just the outcome. And to make those systems real, he gives us the 4 laws of behavior change. Anyone who's looked into habits will probably recognize these. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. For the good habits, anyway. And then you just flip them to break bad habits.
Yeah.
Right. Make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, unsatisfying.
Yeah.
But in your experience, reading the book and seeing how people use it, which of those laws do people tend to, underestimate?
Yeah.
Or maybe misapply when they're up against a really stubborn habit?
Oh, that's a great question. Because they sound intuitive, right? But using them consistently, that's the trick. I'd argue people most often underestimate make it easy, and probably make it obvious, too.
Really? Not attractive or satisfying?
Well, those are important, but we tend to think, oh, I just need more willpower. I just need to be more disciplined. We rely on grit. But Clear really shows that designing your environment strategically, that's often much more effective. Making the good habits just effortless, frictionless. And making the bad habits a real pain. It's about lowering that friction so much that the good habit practically happens on its own.
So it's less about pure willpower and more about, smart laziness. Is that fair? Like you said, putting your running shoes right by the door instead of, digging them out of the back of the closet. I might need to rethink my kitchen layout after this. But okay, beyond just the actions, the external stuff, Clear goes deeper with this idea of identity-based habits. This feels like where the really deep, lasting change happens, focusing on who you want to become, not just the goal you want to hit. How does he suggest we actually start shifting that internal identity, especially if, our past actions maybe don't line up with who we want to be?
Exactly. It's about setting yourself up for success, strategically. And yeah, identity-based habits, you've hit on something crucial there. That's often the missing link. Clear suggests starting small, with tiny actions that prove the new identity to yourself. So for example, if you want to be a writer, don't just declare it. Write one sentence every single day.
Just one sentence?
Just one, because each time you do that tiny action, you're basically casting a vote for that identity. I am a writer. And over time, those little votes add up. They start to change how you see yourself, from someone who wants to write to someone who is a writer. And this connects right back to designing your environment, too. Think about how much our surroundings influence us,
Yeah.
often way more than sheer motivation does on any given day.
Hmm.
Want to read more? Okay, put a book on your pillow. Simple. Want to watch less TV? Maybe unplug it after you use it, add that little bit of friction. These tiny nudges, they really accumulate.
That makes so much sense. You're building evidence for this new self, vote by vote. And another really practical tool he gives us is habit stacking. Love this one. It's basically pairing a new habit you want to form with one you already do without thinking. It sounds so simple. Like his famous example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute,
Sure.
or after I brush my teeth, I will floss one tooth. What makes that specific technique just click for so many people? Why is it so effective?
Well, its effectiveness really comes down to leveraging the brain's existing pathways. Our brains are wired for efficiency, right? So by attaching or stacking a new behavior onto a routine that's already automatic, you cut down on the need for conscious effort, for decision making.
Ah,
The cue for the new habit just becomes the end of the old habit. It's already there. It minimizes that willpower drain because you're not trying to conjure up a whole new behavior from scratch. You're just sort of extending an existing chain. It's a super low friction way to start something new.
right, latching onto something that's already rolling. Okay, so we've talked about the mechanics, the psychology, these practical frameworks. And the book really does an amazing job of boiling down complex ideas into advice that's super clear, super actionable. It feels universal, too. Whether it's health, work, personal growth, these principles seem to apply across the board.
Mhm.
But it's probably fair to also look at the bigger picture. I mean, there are critiques out there, aren't there?
Mhm.
Does Clear's work represent something fundamentally new, or is it more like a really skillful synthesis of ideas that were already around?
That's a very fair point, and it's important to ask that of any really popular work like this. While Atomic Habits is, I think, undeniably brilliant in its clarity and its actionable structure, some critics do point out that it doesn't necessarily introduce brand new scientific breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Many of the core concepts that you learn, cues, routines, rewards, the importance of environment, they echo earlier research. People like Charles Duhigg in The Power of Habit, or BJ Fogg with his tiny habits model. Clear's genius, I would argue, is really in his incredible ability to simplify, to synthesize, and then to package all these ideas. He makes them exceptionally accessible and, frankly, compelling for a huge audience.
Yeah.
He took the science and made it incredibly practical for everyday life.
And what about the scope? Does it get into maybe the deeper reasons why we have certain habits, the psychological roots? Or is it mostly focused on the how-to, the mechanics of changing them?
It definitely leans more heavily into the mechanics, the how-to. So for someone who's dealing with habits that are maybe deeply tangled up with past trauma or complex mental health issues, Atomic Habits will give them excellent tools for how to modify the behavior, but it doesn't really delve into the why those patterns started or the deeper emotional work that might be needed alongside the habit change.
Right, it's not therapy.
Exactly. It's an incredibly effective guide for behavior modification, for behavior change, but it doesn't pretend to be a comprehensive psychological treatment manual. Its real strength lies in that pragmatic, systems-based approach, making good actions almost inevitable and making the bad ones really difficult.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening? Atomic Habits really stands out, doesn't it? Not just for the ideas, but for how incredibly clear and organized it is. And the tools are just so actionable. We've talked about the huge power in starting really, really small, the cleverness of habit stacking to build new routines onto old ones, that really profound shift you get when you focus on identity, on who you want to become. And maybe the most underestimated part, optimizing your environment, making things easy or hard. It all seems to boil down to really understanding and leveraging that compounding effect of your small daily choices.
Indeed. And these aren't just, random tips. They connect to a bigger picture about personal growth, about consistency. It shows that lasting change isn't usually about some heroic, massive effort. It's more about being consistent and smart with our everyday actions. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought, something for you to consider this week. If it's true that our environment often shapes our behavior more than our motivation does, what's one tiny, almost invisible adjustment you could make to your immediate surroundings, maybe even right now or today? Something to make a good habit just a tiny bit easier, frictionless, or a bad habit just a little bit harder. It's an interesting question, I think. Makes you consider how much power we actually have to design our own behavior, our own future, even starting with those smallest, most